The city of St. Louis had grown numb to the news. Another woman gone. Another family left behind, staring at flashing police lights, waiting for answers that never came. For years, a shadow stalked the streets, taking women one by one, leaving only silence and fear in his wake. The killer didn't just hide, he taunted. Letters mailed to police stations, mocking their failures. Messages scrawled on alley walls, cryptic clues left behind as if daring detectives to catch him. And yet, time after time, he walked free. The newspapers called him the Phantom of St. Louis. The public called him something worse, a ghost that lived among them. But beneath the headlines and hysteria, behind the man who believed himself untouchable, there lived a quiet truth. Monsters rarely hide as well as they think. And sometimes, their own family becomes the key to justice. This story isn't about the killer alone. It's about his daughter, Naomi, a young woman underestimated by everyone, dismissed as quiet, naive, and powerless. Yet in the end, she would prove stronger than the man who raised her. She would be the one to bring him down. By 2015, the killings had stretched across nearly a decade. 13 women, mothers, sisters, daughters, disappeared under similar circumstances. All black, all from working-class neighborhoods. Their stories rarely made national news. The pattern was chilling. Each woman vanished on a weekend night, last seen leaving a club, a bus stop, or simply walking home. Days later, their bodies would be discovered in abandoned houses or empty fields on the city's outskirts. The killer was meticulous. He left almost nothing behind, except for one eerie signature, a pair of men's work boots, pressed deliberately into the dirt near every scene, as if to say, I was here, and you can't touch me. Police poured resources into the case, but the truth was ugly. Many in the community believed law enforcement didn't care enough, not when the victims were black women from struggling neighborhoods. Protests broke out, signs held high. Our lives matter too. Find the phantom. The killer seemed to delight in their pain. Letters sent to the local newspaper mocked the protests, sneering at the families. I'm still out here. One letter read, You'll never stop me. You're looking in the wrong places, fools. The arrogance was suffocating. And yet, behind the curtain of terror, one young woman lived in quiet dread, not because she feared the phantom, but because she recognized something in those letters. The handwriting, the phrasing, the voice. Naomi recognized her father. Naomi Carter was 24 years old, a nursing assistant who worked double shifts at a community clinic. She had always been a quiet one, the good daughter. Her father, Raymond Carter, was a construction foreman. Outwardly, he was respected in their neighborhood. Strict, no nonsense, the kind of man who seemed reliable. But Naomi knew the truth about Raymond. She had grown up with his anger, his control, his sharp words that cut deeper than fists. She had learned early how to shrink herself, how to stay out of his way. Still, even Naomi wasn't prepared for the sinking realization when she saw the phantom's letter reprinted in the St. Louis Dispatch. The way the words curved. The strange phrasing, Raymond's old habit of calling police dogs sniffing in the wrong yard. It was him. At first, Naomi told herself she was wrong. It was impossible. Her father was harsh, but he wasn't a murderer. She wanted to believe that, needed to believe it. But then came the night she found his boots. They sat in the back of his closet, mud caked on the soles. The exact same tread pattern police had shown on TV. Naomi's heart raced as she crouched there, staring at them. She wanted to scream, to burn them, to erase the truth, but she couldn't, because deep down she knew. Her father wasn't just Raymond Carter. He was a phantom. What made the killer truly dangerous wasn't just his brutality. It was his boldness. Raymond mocked detectives in public, laughing with neighbors about the clueless cops who couldn't catch a ghost. He would sit in their living room, sipping coffee, while Naomi's mother shook her head at the evening news. 13 women gone. Her mother whispered once, God help their families. Raymond had smirked. Police don't care about people like that. That's why he'll never be caught. Naomi caught his eyes across the room. For a brief second, she saw it, the glint of satisfaction. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay awake, her mind turning over the impossible weight she carried. Should she go to police? Who would believe her? She was just a young woman from North St. Louis, without power or influence. The community already felt ignored. Would detectives listen if she accused her own father? But Naomi also knew this. If she stayed silent, more women would die. The breaking point came in January 2016. Naomi came home from a late shift at the clinic. The house was quiet, too quiet. She set down her bag and noticed the back door slightly ajar. Her father's boots were gone. Hours later, she saw the news. Another woman's body had been discovered near an abandoned church. The same boot prints in the mud. Naomi's stomach turned. She could no longer tell herself she was imagining things. It was him, and he had just killed again. For weeks, Naomi lived in torment. She wanted to protect her mother, who seemed oblivious. She wanted to protect herself. But above all, she wanted to protect the women who would die if she did nothing. One evening, she stayed late at the clinic, staring at her phone, the number of the police tip line glowing on the screen. Her finger hovered. She shook. She cried. And then she pressed dial. "Crime Stoppers, how can we help you?" Her voice trembled as she whispered, "I think the phantom killer is my father." The call set off a chain of events Naomi could never have imagined. Detectives who had spent years chasing shadows finally had a lead. But even then, many doubted her. She was young. She was just a daughter. Maybe she was confused. But Naomi refused to back down. And soon, she would give police the piece of evidence that changed everything. The one thing her father never thought would betray him. Naomi thought she'd feel relief after making the call. She thought a weight would lift off her chest, that she could finally breathe knowing she had done the right thing. But that night, as she sat on the edge of her bed, she felt heavier than ever because nothing happened. No squad cars pulling up, no arrest, no flashing lights outside her house. Her father came home like he always did, boots on the porch, mud on his pants, whistling as if nothing had happened. And Naomi realized the truth. Telling the police was only the beginning. 2 days later, Naomi was called to a police precinct on the north side. The detective who greeted her looked tired, skeptical, and in a rush. His name was Detective Harlan, a veteran with 20 years on the force. "So," he said, flipping open a notebook, "you're saying your father is the phantom killer?" Naomi nodded, hands clenched in her lap. "Yes, I know it's him." Harlan raised an eyebrow. "That's a pretty serious accusation. What makes you so sure?" Naomi told him about the handwriting, the boots, the late-night disappearances. She spoke in detail, her voice trembling but steady. When she finished, Harlan leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "You're a brave young woman," he said carefully. "But you understand how this sounds, right? People have accused relatives before. Most of the time it's nothing." "Most of the time," Naomi said, leaning forward, "their fathers don't mock the police in letters printed in the newspaper. You have to look into him." "Please." Harlan scribbled something in his notebook, then closed it. "We'll look into it." But Naomi saw in his eyes doubt, the same kind of doubt her community had faced for years. When black women cried for justice, they were ignored. Now, when she cried for help, she was ignored too. Raymond Carter continued living his double life. To neighbors, he was a hard-working foreman, a man who provided for his family. To his co-workers, he was rough but dependable. But at home, Naomi saw the cracks in his mask. Late one night, she walked into the kitchen for water and found him at the table, polishing his boots. He looked up sharply, his eyes narrowing. "What are you doing up?" he asked. "Just thirsty," Naomi whispered. His gaze lingered on her, suspicious, before he went back to his work. The boots gleamed under the dim light, and Naomi noticed something, a dark stain on the laces. Not mud, not grease, something thicker. She swallowed hard and backed out of the room, her pulse hammering in her ears. The next morning, she couldn't shake the image. The boots, the stain, his eyes. Her father knew she was watching him. Weeks passed. Another letter arrived at the St. Louis Dispatch. "I told you," it read in jagged script. "You'll never catch me. You don't even know where to look. The editor turned it over to police, who compared the handwriting with previous letters. It was a perfect match. Detective Harlan stared at the paper, frustration etched on his face. They had nothing concrete, no DNA, no fingerprints, just a string of taunts. But Naomi saw the letter too, printed in the paper, and she noticed something no one else did. A phrase, dogs sniffing in the wrong yard. Her father had said the same thing at their dinner table weeks earlier, word for word. The evidence screamed at her. Yet still, she was alone. Naomi's mother, Lorraine, was a gentle woman who avoided conflict. Naomi wanted to tell her the truth, but every time she tried, the words froze in her throat. How do you tell your own mother that the man she's loved for 30 years is a monster? One evening, Naomi tried. As they folded laundry, she whispered, "Mom, do you ever think Dad acts strange?" Lorraine chuckled softly. "Your father's always been strange, baby, but he's a good man. He's taken care of us." Naomi's chest tightened. Her mother couldn't see it, or maybe she refused to. Either way, Naomi was on her own. If the police wouldn't listen, Naomi realized she'd have to give them undeniable proof, something they couldn't dismiss. She began keeping notes, times her father left the house, things he said, even the condition of his boots. She hid the notebook under her mattress, terrified he'd find it. One night, as Raymond left the house muttering about checking on a job site, Naomi slipped into his room and snapped photos of the boots with her phone. The tread matched the police sketches she'd seen on the news. Her hands shook so badly, she almost dropped the phone. She knew the risk. If he caught her snooping, it wouldn't just be anger. It would be violence. Maybe worse. But Naomi kept going, because deep down, she knew this was the only way to stop him. By spring, the killings had slowed. For nearly 3 months, no new bodies were found. The city exhaled, believing maybe the phantom had moved on. But Naomi knew better. Her father grew restless, pacing the house at night, snapping at small things. He was like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike again. And then, one evening, Naomi overheard him on the phone. His voice was low, urgent. "No, not yet. Too much heat. Gotta wait. They think I'm gone." That's the beauty of it. Naomi's stomach dropped. He wasn't finished. He was just waiting. The next killing came in June. A young mother named Keisha, just 27, vanished walking home from her late shift. 2 days later, her body was found in an abandoned factory. And next to her, in the dust, the familiar imprint of a work boot. The city erupted in anger. Protests surged again. People chanted in the streets, "Catch the phantom. Protect our women." Naomi watched it all unfold on the news, her heart breaking. Keisha had been a patient at the clinic once. Naomi had given her son a lollipop during a checkup. Now she was gone, and Naomi knew she couldn't wait anymore. She had to end this. Naomi gathered everything she had. Photos of boots, her notes, even a recording she secretly made of her father muttering about stupid cops while drunk. She put it all in a folder and took it to the precinct. When Detective Harlan flipped through it, his eyes changed. For the first time, Naomi saw a belief flicker there. "This is something," he admitted. "We might be able to use this. But you have to understand, your father is dangerous. If he even suspects you're helping us." Naomi met his gaze, her voice steady. "He already suspects. That's why we have to move fast." But Raymond Carter wasn't stupid. He had eluded police for nearly 10 years. He sensed the walls closing in. And soon, Naomi would discover that her father had been watching her, too. Raymond Carter had survived this long because he was careful, calculated. But he wasn't careless enough to ignore the shifts inside his own home. He noticed how Naomi's eyes lingered on him too long, how she stiffened when he entered a room, how she asked small, strange questions about his work trips. And one night, as he rummaged through a drawer, he found something that chilled him, a scrap of paper, notes in Naomi's handwriting, times, dates, his movements. Raymond clenched the paper in his fist, his jaw tightening. His daughter was keeping tabs on him. For the first time in years, he felt something dangerous, vulnerability. Naomi didn't realize the notes were gone until 2 days later. Her stomach dropped when she checked under her mattress and found the hiding place empty. Her father hadn't said a word about it, but that silence was worse than any confrontation, because Naomi knew predators didn't lash out right away. They waited. They circled. They struck when their prey least expected it. Every creak of the floorboard, every shadow passing under a bedroom door, made her heart race. She began sleeping with her phone clutched in her hand, rehearsing what she'd say if she had to dial 911. Meanwhile, Detective Harlan and his team were stuck. The photos of the boots, the notes, even the muttered recording. It wasn't enough for a warrant. Circumstantial evidence could be shredded in court. "We need him at the scene," Harlan muttered to his partner. "We need him caught in the act, or this goes nowhere." But how do you catch a ghost who only appeared when he chose? That's when Harlan proposed something radical. What if we let him think he's safe? He's arrogant. He'll slip. They always slip. The idea was dangerous. And Naomi would be the key. Naomi met Harlan in a quiet cafe across town. She sat in the corner, hood pulled up, terrified her father might somehow follow her. Harlan leaned in. "He knows you're watching him, doesn't he?" Naomi nodded, voice low. "I think so. I think he found my notes." "Then it's only a matter of time before he tests you," Harlan said grimly. "He'll want to know how much you've seen, whether you've told anyone." Naomi's throat tightened. "So what do I do?" Harlan looked her in the eye. "You keep playing the role. You keep being his daughter. But you call me the second he slips, because when he does, we'll be ready." The very next evening, Raymond tested her. They sat at the dinner table, Raymond, Naomi, and Lorraine. The TV played faintly in the background, news anchors discussing the latest protests against the police. Raymond set down his fork and looked at Naomi. His voice was calm, too calm. "You know, girl," he said, "these cops don't know what they're doing. If I was that phantom everyone's so scared of, I'd be laughing in their faces." Naomi's pulse thundered in her ears. He was watching her carefully, searching her face for a flicker, a flinch. She forced a laugh. "Yeah, I guess you would." Raymond leaned back in his chair, smiling faintly, but his eyes stayed cold. Naomi excused herself as soon as she could, rushing to her room, where she collapsed against the door, shaking. She knew then her father suspected her, and she was running out of time. The next murder happened just a week later. A young man this time, a college student walking home late. His body was left in an alley, staged almost mockingly, with a boot print pressed into the dirt beside him. The city boiled with rage. Newspapers screamed, "Phantom killer strikes again." And this time, the letter wasn't just mockery. It was personal. "I know you're watching," the note read, "but you'll never stop me. You don't even know who I am." Naomi read it in the paper the next morning, bile rising in her throat, because she recognized the phrasing again. Her father had said something almost identical during an argument weeks earlier. He wasn't just mocking the police anymore. He was mocking her. That night, Raymond approached Naomi in the kitchen. His tone was deceptively casual, but his words froze her blood. "Naomi," he said, "you ever wonder what it's like to take power? To be the one in control? People don't understand, but maybe you would." Naomi stared at him, forcing her face into a mass of confusion. "I don't know what you're talking about." Raymond smiled, a predator's smile. "You will one day." And then he walked away, leaving her trembling, her heart pounding so loud she thought it might give her away. That was the breaking point. Naomi realized she couldn't just wait for the police to act. Every day she stayed silent. More lives were at risk. She sat on her bed that night, tears burning her eyes, and recorded a video message on her phone. "If anything happens to me, it was my father. His name is Raymond Carter. He is the Phantom Killer. Please, don't let him get away with it." She saved the video and sent it to Detective Harlan. It was a clever strategy, and some jurors shifted uneasily in their seats. But the prosecution had more than Naomi's word. They had the boots, the DNA, the letters he sent to police, laced with the same phrases Raymond had used in conversation. They even found trophies in the cabin, small personal items stolen from victims. The defense tried to argue planting, fabrication, conspiracy. But piece by piece, the truth closed in like a vice. Outside the courthouse, the city was divided. Some hailed Naomi as a hero, a young black woman who stood up against fear and power, exposing a monster hiding in plain sight. Others whispered cruelly that she had betrayed her family, that she had destroyed her own blood for attention. Protesters lined the streets, some demanding the death penalty, others claiming Raymond was a scapegoat for a broken system. Naomi, shielded by police, felt every word like a stone thrown at her back. One night, as the trial stretched into its second week, Naomi sat alone in her hotel room, staring at the news coverage. Her father's face filled the screen, his smirk replayed again and again. She whispered to herself, "Why did you make me do this, Dad? Why couldn't you just be normal?" Tears blurred her vision. For all the horror, for all the blood, she still remembered the man who had once lifted her onto his shoulders, who had taught her to ride a bike. But those memories felt poisoned now, tainted by the truth. On the final week of the trial, Raymond himself took the stand. He looked at the jury with the same charisma that had fooled so many for years. "I am not the Phantom. I'm a father, a hard-working man. And my daughter," he paused, voice breaking with mock sorrow. "She's been used, manipulated. I still love her, but she's wrong." The jury looked torn, until the prosecutor stood and played the recording from Naomi's phone. Raymond's own voice filled the courtroom. "I am the Phantom. They'll never catch me. I decide who lives and who dies." The silence that followed was absolute. Jurors stared at him, horrified. Some shook their heads. Raymond tried to laugh it off. "That's out of context, just words." But no one was buying it anymore. After days of deliberation, the jury returned. On the charge of first-degree murder, guilty. On the charge of kidnapping, guilty. On all counts, guilty. The courtroom erupted. Some cried with relief. Others cheered. Naomi sat frozen, tears streaming silently down her face. Her father, once so untouchable, so arrogant, now stood shackled and broken, his smirk finally gone. Raymond Carter, the Phantom, was sentenced to life without parole. But justice didn't end the story. Naomi became a symbol in the media, the daughter who ended the Phantom's reign. She was invited to interviews, praise and articles, flooded with messages of support and hate. Some called her courageous. Others called her a traitor. Every night, Naomi lay awake, caught between two truths. She had stopped a monster, but that monster was still her father. And deep down, she wondered if she would ever escape his shadow. The trial was over. The cameras left. The city began to breathe again. But for Naomi Carter, silence did not bring peace. Everywhere she went, whispers followed her. At the grocery store, on the bus, walking down the street. "That's the girl who turned in her father." Some looked at her with gratitude, others with suspicion, and a few with cold, unforgiving eyes. At night, Naomi sat on her bed replaying every moment. The cabin, the confession, the trial. She wondered if she could have done things differently, if she could have saved him from himself before the monster took over. But then she remembered the faces of his victims on the courtroom screen, their families clutching photographs, their voices breaking as they told the jury what had been stolen from them. And she knew, if she hadn't spoken, there would have been more. From prison, Raymond tried to reach her. Letters arrived weekly, his handwriting sharp and commanding. "You betrayed me. The truth is not what you think. You will regret this." At first, Naomi read them, searching for fathers she had once known. But the more she read, the clearer it became Raymond wasn't seeking forgiveness. He was still trying to control her, even from behind bars. So one night, Naomi set the letters aflame, watched them curl into ash, and whispered, "You don't owe me any more." The trial forced the city to face itself. For years, the Phantom had mocked the police, slipped through cracks, and preyed on the vulnerable. The media painted him as clever, unstoppable, even legendary. But Naomi's act shattered that myth. It wasn't brilliance or power that brought him down. It wasn't a high-tech task force or government agency. It was a young black woman who had been overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed until she found the courage to speak. The irony burned. The Phantom thought he was untouchable, but in the end, the daughter he raised became the hand of justice. Naomi later spoke to a group of high school students. She stood in front of them, nervous, her palms sweating. But as she looked at their faces, hopeful, uncertain, searching, her voice steadied. Sometimes, she said, the people closest to us aren't who we think they are. And sometimes the hardest choice, the one that tears you apart, is the one that saves lives. Don't let fear silence you. Don't let love blind you. Speak the truth, even when it hurts. Because silence only protects the powerful, never the innocent. The room was silent, and for the first time since the trial, Naomi felt a strange, fragile peace. The Phantom wanted to be remembered as a legend, but the city did not honor his name. Instead, they remembered Naomi, the girl who chose justice over blood, truth over fear. And though the shadow of her father would always follow her, she had found something he never could, the strength to stand in the light. The Phantom thought he was untouchable. But in the end, it wasn't the police, it wasn't the FBI. It was his own daughter who ended his reign of terror. A reminder that sometimes justice doesn't come from power, but from courage. And even in the darkest shadows, one voice can bring the truth into the light. If this story reverberates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. Stories that challenge us, inspire us, remind us of what we're capable of when we stand for justice.